record. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to day 4 of summer camp. I hope you all have enjoyed kind of getting to meet some of the Tableau community members this week, getting a basic understanding of Tableau and the tool this week. To just kind of do a quick refresh of what we've had going on this week is we kicked off on Monday, really getting a deep dive into the importance of data literacy and connecting with people through data, then hearing an incredible student story to get us all amped up for the week. On Tuesday, we had Carl Alchin, a Tableau visionary, join us and really dive into Tableau prep and give us a full demo around that aspect, and gave a ton of community-led programs to really stretch and test your skills within Tableau prep. And then yesterday, we saw a unique and interesting way to kind of get familiar with Tableau as a tool through an escape room style demo with Mark Bradburn, and then ended it with a Tableau student ambassador story, Maggie. And so today I'm really excited to kind of jump into the whole meat of this entire week is really getting you all some hands-on training with Tableau. And so I will pass it over to Bailey and her interns in just a moment. But Bailey is a senior solution engineer at Tableau and is based out of Austin, Texas. She's been using Tableau for almost 7 years and loves finding new and creative ways to help people see and understand data. And so with that, I will pass it over to Bailey and her team.
Oh, I'm on mute. Amazing. Thank you so much. Let me go ahead and share my screen and then we'll dive right in. So thank you so much for the intro. Took the words right out of my mouth. In fact, you probably introduced me better than I introduced me. So I won't belabor that point, but I do want to talk a little bit about my journey in a second. But before we do that, and before we introduce ourselves further, I did just want to call out, if you haven't already downloaded the starter guide that we're going to be using for the hands-on lab, please do so. I believe the Virgin shared the link yesterday via email. If you didn't grab it then, no worries. I created a bit.ly, like a quick link for it. So literally just type in bit.ly/HOT hands-on training _starter. And you'll be brought to that Ignite folder with the starter Tableau workbook. That does require Tableau desktop. So if you don't have that, also try to download that before the hands-on training so that you can follow along. If you don't have it, no worries. You could just watch what I do. But the idea of hands-on training is to get hands-on. So do you want to take a second to do that? Oh, perfect. And Virgin dropped the link in the chat as well. So you can just also snag it from there. Okay, perfect. So yeah, she introduced me great, but just to give a little bit more context, I'm a senior solution engineer at Tableau. I specifically support our commercial and enterprise CMT, so communications, media, and technology customers, mostly T, so mostly other software and tech companies that are using Tableau either to do internal reporting, metrics on what type of software they're selling, how much of it, to whom, and even external use cases as well. So customers that are providing, customer portals to their customers so that they can see, analytics around how they're using their platform or over further monetizing the solution from there. I'm also joined by 2 amazing solution engineering interns, Janae and Paul. I will actually just let them introduce themselves. So I'll go to you first, Janae.
Great, thank you, Bailey. Hello, everyone. My name is Janae Chukwu. I am an intern here at Tableau. I joined on May 16th, I believe, and my last week is actually next week, but it's been so great. I'm actually a mechanical engineering major at the University of Houston with a math and supply chain minor. People typically say like, oh, why do you get into sales? Why don't you get into solution engineering? It's kind of like different, but it's kind of like, I think it's a passion for me to just sell to customers and kind of just like solve their problems. So that kind of blends into me being an engineering major because all we do is solve problems. But here at Tableau, I've been really fortunate to work with great people like Bailey and my manager and my mentor and my fellow interns as well. It's been a great journey here and I would absolutely love to come back. So if you guys do have any more questions for my experience here, I can drop my LinkedIn and walk you through my experience here I've had at Tableau. But thanks for now. I'll pass it on to Paul.
Hi, everyone. My name's Paul Wolcott, as you can see on the screen. I go to TCU. I'm going to be a senior there. I'm a business information systems major, and my experience at Tableau has been awesome. I was first introduced to Tableau through coursework in college. We used it for some of like my data analytics classes. And like the first time I used it, I thought it was such an amazing tool. Like what you can do with Tableau is unmatched, like visually. Like it literally brings your data from numbers to this beautiful presentation. It brings it to life and gets it so much energy and vibrancy. I'm based out of the Austin, Texas office. However, I'm up in Fort Worth this week working remote. And yeah, I've been an intern, love my experience. If you guys have questions, I'll be answering them in the chat. So look forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Janae. Great experience. Yeah, it's amazing to get to partner with you guys. I feel like I learned so much from you as well of just coming in and bringing your experience. Before I dive in, I am noticing in the chat that some people are having issues opening the file in Tableau Public. So I tested it this morning. It seemed to be working for me. I would just ensure that you have the latest version of like Tableau Desktop Public Edition downloaded. If that isn't working, what I will do right now for you, Burjan, is send you the data set so that they can just connect to it rather than like open the starter file. So give me 1 second while I share that data set with you so you can drop it in the chat.
Sure, that sounds great.
Perfect. You may need to put it in Ignite as well. I'm not sure if we can do file uploads, but I'll let you work on that while I have the initial slides. The good news is that there's about, I don't know, a couple more minutes of content while we, before we actually dive in. So we can kind of continue troubleshooting this in multitask. I'll tell you a little bit about my journey as well while doing so. If I can just, let's see if there's a way to just gauge how many people are having problems with it as well, if it's every single person or if it's just a couple. So feel free to drop in the chat. If you aren't having issues, if it is working, just let us know that it is working so we can see, if it's widespread or if it's just, just a couple of people having problems with it. Okay. Cool. So let me talk a little bit about myself while we troubleshoot and make sure it's working for everyone, but I'm glad to see that it's working for quite a few of y'all already. Similar to probably most of you and my colleagues that just introduced themselves, I learned about Tableau when I was in college. So let's rewind all the way back to 2015. I was about halfway through my undergraduate experience at the University of Colorado Boulder. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, with my life or with myself, right? Like most 19, 20-year-olds. And so my solution to that problem was just adding on majors. It was a chaotic solution, but a solution nonetheless. So I ended up graduating with 3 degrees, behavioral psychology, digital marketing, and then information analytics. And it wasn't until I started taking information analytics classes that I realized, where my true passion lies. And it's kind of a combination between creativity and analysis, right? And analytics, statistics overall. And so Tableau was like the perfect marriage of all the things I liked. It's an incredibly creative tool, but it still has some of those hard skills that I, acquired and enjoy using, like overall data analysis or statistical analysis. So when I first took those classes and started learning about Tableau as an undergraduate, I was so excited. Instead of doing the kind of traditional route of a business student in college and finding internships with other companies, I decided to go all in on academia. So I became a research assistant for one of my PhD professors. Her PhD was in leadership studies. So working for her under her lab, getting to use tools like Tableau, RStudio, other analytics solutions to dig into her research, which was incredibly awesome because I got to see, hey, within these Fortune 500 companies, what makes a great leader, what makes people stay at a company, what makes people leave companies. So overall, very cool academic study from her. And again, more exposure to Tableau. I made the choice to graduate and do the one thing that they tell you not to do. And that was I did not have a job lined up when I left college. I decided life's too short. I don't want to, go directly out of undergrad into a job and, spend my whole day in my office. So my then boyfriend, now husband, and I decided to backpack through Europe. So if you ever have a question of, hey, should I take that risk or should I live my life? Do it. life is way too short to not have those types of experiences and find fun along the way. And I am like living, breathing proof that you can still have a great career in tech, even if you do take, a couple weeks to yourself to explore and to really enjoy life. So in Europe, halfway through my Europe trip, I had another existential crisis where I was like, okay, well, I should probably get a job. I should probably figure this out. So I downloaded LinkedIn and I just started messaging people, current Tableau employees, and say, hey, I love your product. I love this company. Everyone that I've met or, kind of networked with within the Tableau community is awesome. What can I do to get involved? And the people here at Tableau are almost as amazing as the product. So people were really warm and really receptive, great networking opportunities. So again, another, I guess, piece of unsolicited feedback is relationships are worth their weight in gold. So don't feel, just like Jenny's saying, add her on LinkedIn. Like that's an awesome opportunity to network and build connections with people because those will really help you, figure out a right path and a right career track for you. So that's what I did. I met up with some people from Tableau, ended up meeting a salesperson. So we call them account managers, or we called them at the time. This was in 2018. So pre Salesforce acquisition. I joined Tableau as a product consultant, was here for about 2.5, almost 3 years. And then I decided to take the dive and leave Tableau. Actually ended up being a mistake, but we'll get there, to join a Tableau consulting partner. I wanted the experience of hands-on implementation. So got to actually roll my sleeves up and actually help people implement Tableau within their production environments, right? See how people were actually using Tableau out in the wild. And then fast forward to now, 2022, I can't believe I almost said 2020. Time isn't real with COVID. But I rejoined Tableau about a year ago. Technically, I rejoined Salesforce because Tableau is a Salesforce company as a senior solution engineer as I am now. So again, kind of an unconventional and untraditional journey here, but it's brought me to where I am, and I am so grateful for literally every step along the way. So again, take risks, build relationships. Life is too short to not do the things you love. And if you find people you respect in a product you're enthusiastic about, chase it, right? Don't give up on, getting involved in that community. And obviously I'm biased, but I think the whole Tableau Salesforce ecosystem is an amazing opportunity for you to A, build those technical skills, and B, build relationships with people. Cool. So enough about me. Let's talk a little bit about the background going into this exercise. So Burgeon is awesome. And it was like, Bailey, just, put together a training. What do you think they want to see? What do you talk to customers about? And I loved it because it was super open-ended, but there's so much that Tableau can do. Obviously, Mark, who is an amazing colleague, I hope you guys enjoyed the escape room demo yesterday. I know he was doing something a little bit more fun. So I wanted this to be more practical, like an actual data set that you would see, should you either come to Tableau and work with, our customers, or go out to, be an analyst and work for a Tableau customer who, uses Tableau for their internal or potentially external reporting. So, again, I'm biased because Tableau is now a Salesforce customer or a Salesforce company. We were acquired by Salesforce. So what better data set to use than data from Salesforce? If you don't know what Salesforce is, don't worry. I'm going to tell you in like 3 sentences or less. So I'll give you the 500-foot view of what Salesforce is, but more importantly, why that data matters for visual analysis or visual representation in Tableau. And then we're going to go really zero in. There's kind of 2 main business questions we're going to try to answer with that Salesforce data. So I'll kind of map those out and talk about, why they're important and like what next steps we could actually take or what actions we could take from answering those business questions. Then we're going to go into that hands-on activity. This is where we want to open that starter package workbook. If you can't open the starter package workbook, just connecting to that CSV file. It's also in Ignite. One thing to note, if you're going to if you open Tableau Desktop Public and you connect to the CSV file, I did some additional like formatting and massaging of the data in that starter workbook. That's why we started with the workbook rather than just the raw data set. So as I'm demoing, it might look a little bit different. So rather than looking for like folders that I organized fields into, just type in the field name. But just wanted to call that out. If you do just connect to the raw data rather than the starter workbook, it might look a little bit different, but the fields will still be the same. We're going to build some data visualizations, of course. We're going to build some dashboards, of course. That's what Tableau does best. And then we're going to talk about actually sharing or publishing your work. There's, the Tableau server or Tableau online approach, which is what you would see again out in the wild. But for our purposes, Tableau Public and kind of how to use Tableau Public to engage with that larger community. throughout my demonstration and really everything, you're more than welcome to put comments or questions in the chat. But we're also going to have some, I guess, more open-ended time towards the end, hopefully, to address questions as well. Janae and Paul will be monitoring the chat as I go. So especially as I'm like demoing or doing the hands-on training, if there's any technical things or like, hey, what would this do? Or why did you drag this there? Definitely jot those down. And like I said, they can either address it live or we can circle back towards the end and talk a little bit more about it. Okay. So I was trying to figure out how to set the stage. And again, practical use cases that reflect what we see all the time with our customers. And at the end of the day, why you should care about Tableau, why you should learn Tableau, and why other people care about Tableau and prioritize learning Tableau is that data-driven organizations just simply perform better. They're much more successful within our economy. They're 23 times more likely to add customers, 1.5 times more likely to grow revenue more than 10%, and they're 9 times more likely to retain customers. This is just cold hard facts, quantifiable data, proving from external sources, McKinsey in this case, why data matters, why it's a hot skill for you to learn, and why customers spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars investing in solutions to help them, do this, answer these types of business questions. So let's talk a little bit about data in the real world. I told you I was going to tell you a little bit about what Salesforce is. So this is where I'm going to do so. When we think about data and where it's coming from and why tools like Tableau exist, it's important to kind of take a step back and think of an entire, what we call a data pipeline. So where is data coming from? What is like an intermediary between where it's coming from and where it's visualized, and then how is it visualized? So the first kind of step to think about in general when talking about analyzing and visualizing data is how that data was collected or generated. In our case, when we're using Salesforce data, it was collected or generated in Salesforce, usually by a salesperson entering in information, right? What's the customer's name? Who are the people at this company? Who do I think is going to buy software? What type of software do I think they're going to buy? When do I think they're going to buy it, right? That's that manual data entry. And that is that first step in the pipeline. Data has to come from somewhere, in this case, manual collection. The next step in a workflow or a pipeline is where data is stored. And that is where Salesforce CRM is going to come into play. So once that data is collected, it's super important to have like a flexible and intuitive UI or mechanism to store all of the data. Common data storage solutions, Salesforce, of course, that's what we're using today. But if you've heard of like ERP systems, NetSuite, for example, or just in general, like databases or data warehouse, Snowflake, Databricks, just other big names in the kind of overall data community or data ecosystem. The beauty of Tableau is that it's data source agnostic. We really don't care where your data is coming from as long as we can connect to it, and we can connect to hundreds of different locations. So incredible flexibility, regardless where your data is stored and regardless how your data is collected. And then, of course, the last piece of that data pipeline, right? We started from collection, we put it all somewhere, we stored all of our data somewhere, in this case, Salesforce. Now we want to actually visualize this data. Visualization is a necessary step in any data pipeline, because if you think about it, data is rapidly increasing in size and velocity and variety. Like there's data points on everything all the time, new data constantly coming in. And so when you have millions or billions of data points, it's not actually very useful to have that unless you can actually extract insights out of it in a meaningful and easy way. If you have an Excel file with millions of rows, think of how long it's going to take you to, God forbid, look at it one by one and try to understand each row of data, or even write those kind of complex calculations, trying to pull insights out of it. And that is why Tableau exists, why it's been the leader in visual analytics for 10 plus years, and why I'm sure, again, biased, but I think it's going to stick around for many, many years to come. So we've talked about where the data is coming from and why. Now let's actually focus in on what we're going to try to do. I'm Italian, so I talk with my hands. So if you see me talking with my hands, that's why. What we're going to try to do with that data. So there's two kind of main questions we're going to ask of our Salesforce data set in Tableau. The first of which, again, if you joined a little bit early, you heard Virgin and I talking about how it's the end of quarter here at Tableau. Quarter end is huge. pretty much every single company, because most companies sell something, either services or a product. And a lot of companies are publicly traded, so they report their earnings, and usually that's quarterly. So it's really important to have, quarterly revenue, right? So we want to try to close out as much business as we can at the end of every quarter. A lot of you that are in business school are probably rolling your eyes at me. I'm sorry if this is all review, but it's just good to take a second to kind of calibrate on that. So the first thing we want to do is put it literally is quarter end here at Tableau. Some other companies that have different fiscal calendars, the quarter would end at the end of next month. That's what this demo data set has. So regardless whether or not quarter end is end of July or end of August, still important to ask those questions of, can we sell to them right now? Or can we sell to them before that quarter ends? Who has an open opportunity that we can close in the next 30 days, pretty much? That is in order to actually answer those types of questions, can we sell to them right now or can we sell to them by quarter end? What you want to look at is, number of open opportunities with that account, the size of the open opportunity, how many activities are happening, right? Is the salesperson talking to those contacts regularly, or have we not talked to them for a month? All of that's going to give us insight onto the validity of whether or not that opportunity is going to close. The other business question, or I guess umbrella topic that we're going to try to answer with this data from Salesforce is the past and future state. So have we sold to this customer in the past? What's the likelihood that we're going to sell to them in the future? Again, the questions that we can ask and kind of extract, or that we'll want to know to really gauge that, is stuff like, are they a current customer? How long have they been doing business with us, right? When did they first purchase? Did they purchase from us every year? Have they bought once 4 years ago, but never again? Just in general, their buying patterns. And then again, right, what's that likelihood that they're going to actually buy from us again? And we can tell that or answer that question based off of past behaviors and just overall, like what the state of our partnership, right? Maybe do we offer them a lot of discounts? Do we, only sell during certain months? Whatever it may be, right? We need to find a way to extract those types of insights from this data. I think that's all I had, which is great. Okay, cool. So now we can actually get hands-on with the product. I hope that Tableau Desktop is working for most of you. If it isn't, you can load that CSV file into the workbook. And again, absolute worst case scenario, you can watch me as I go and troubleshoot later. But let's actually put ourselves in a dark place first. Let's imagine a world without Tableau. Very grim, very sad, shed a tear. What would you do if your boss came to you and you had, let's even say our quarter ends at the end of August. Your boss comes to you right now and says, hey, I have this data from Salesforce. I want you to tell me what my open opportunities are and have we ever sold to that account in the past? And this is what you have to work with to answer that question. This is the data set we're going to be using. This is the CSV that we put into Tableau. There's about 4,000 records. Imagine having to go by one and seeing, in this case, you have to even drag the fields out, right? See, hey, what's our close date here? Are there lots of different rows of data for each account? Like, it's a lot, right? It would be really, really hard to go from this tabular view of data to something meaningful to actually say, hey, boss, there's 24 opportunities that are going to close this quarter, and 4 of those accounts have bought from us in the past, right? It would take a lot of work, many, many days of work to get from this to that, even if you're an Excel whiz, even if you know how to write calculations in Excel like nobody's business. With Tableau, we are literally going to answer those 2 questions in the next hour or so. So I'm going to open Tableau Desktop now. This is what you should be saying if you were able to open that starter workbook. If you weren't able to open the starter workbook I provided, you're just going to see a list of all these fields. They just won't be organized by these folders. Something else that you're not going to see if you loaded in the CSV rather than the starter workbook, I created 3 tabs, 2 worksheets in 1 dashboard in that starter workbook. Don't worry about it. As I'm building, you might just want to create your own, and if you want to rename them, whatever you want, or the same names that you're seeing here. I'm going to start on this account overview worksheet. It's blank for me here. And let's try to answer that first business question. Yeah, I did just see this in the chat. Sorry, I need to close the chat so it doesn't distract me as I'm demoing. But Anthony, I will publish this to my Tableau Public and make it downloadable. So the finished version as well as the starter should be available to you post this session. Okay, you're in good hands with the interns. I don't need to keep an eye on the Q&A. Okay, so let's start with our account overview and answer the question of how much revenue or how many opportunities, well, both, right? How much revenue and how many open opportunities do I have closing this quarter? There's a million ways to answer this question, but I like to get started by just dragging out the metric that I know I want to use into my view. So down along the bottom, you're going to notice this amount field. Simply drag this into the main section of the screen where it says drop field here. And you'll notice that Tableau populates around 78 million as the overall amount. This is saying that within our organization, and this is a couple of years of data in this data set, we've overall had $78,000 of potential revenue on the table. The majority of that is closed won, but the opportunities that are set to close this quarter or next quarter, for example, might still be open, right? So this is not necessarily guaranteed revenue. This is just like projected or anticipated forecasted revenue, right? What we think we might own. But this is for all of the years in our data set. To narrow down to just the data that's, the opportunities that are set to close this quarter, simply find the close date field within that opportunities folder, drag that onto the filter shelf, and select the first option that appears in the pop-up window, relative date. Under relative dates, you're going to notice this pretty handy UI. Select quarter from these like buttons along the top here, and it should default to this quarter. So no changes necessary there. If you want to test and make sure that you have the right selection, you can hit apply. In this case, this makes a lot of sense. We would expect to see a much smaller number, around $2 million of closed won, closed lost, and open revenue that is slated to close in this quarter. And like I mentioned, in this data set, this quarter is set to close at the end of August. Okay, so now we have one high-level KPI, right? We see it's about 2.2 million for overall all of our quarter. If we wanted to actually break this down by account, we can find the account name field within our account folder within the data pane and simply drag that field onto rows. Now we have one row for every different account that has an open opportunity associated with it, or technically open, it could be closed won, or it could be closed lost, right? These are just overall the opportunities associated with that account within this quarter. This tabular view is helpful. It was a great way to kind of start building, but in Tableau, we prioritize visualizations, of course. So drag the sum amount field that's currently on text from the marks card onto columns instead, and you'll see Tableau does the work for you and creates a bar chart. From here, you can quick sort. So if we wanted to see what our largest outstanding opportunity is, we could just hover along this kind of bottom toolbar and click the little, it's like almost like a stair step icon to sort it accordingly. In doing so, we see that Five Bridge Institute has the largest opportunity. If we hover over it, we can see our tooltip here. It tells us it's around right under 500K, but overall we're making a lot of progress, right? We can also see along the bottom corner of our screen under, it's really, really small, so you might have to squint a little bit, but Tableau is actually telling us here that there's 23 marks on the view. Since we have used the account name field to kind of break up our bars here, that means that there's 23 accounts with open opportunities set to close this quarter. Again, with Tableau, we're really scratching the surface of what you can do with Tableau. The opportunities are limitless, but I wanted to just show you, a bar chart view is a great way to capture this data. There are also other ways that you can visualize and capture this data as well. But if you're not sure what type of visualization to use, or even what types of visualizations are compatible with the types of fields in your view, I highly recommend you leverage Tableau's Show Me functionality. If you click into Show Me, you'll notice that one of the views that appears is this tree map. I have a love-hate relationship with tree maps. They definitely have a use case, but it's a lot of data. And when we have, let's, in this case, 23 accounts, some of these in the bottom corner can get a little bit small. But in our use case, I actually don't mind it. I think a tree map is a great way to view this data. From here, I can also kind of continue customizing it accordingly. So with my tree map now, I have the size of these squares represent amount, but also so does color. So I'm seeing the darkest shades of blue represent my highest amount opportunities, and the lowest shades of blue represent my lowest opportunities, which technically means I have amount captured twice, right? It's represented by the size of these squares, and it's also represented by the color. This gives us an awesome opportunity to actually add other relevant metrics into the view to be able to answer 2 questions rather than just one. So rather than having some amount on both color and size, let's replace the sum amount that's currently on color. So this icon here, it's kind of between the size and the text within our marks card with discount granted. Simply drag and drop discount granted right on top of that other field to replace it with discount. This is giving us the sum of all of the discounts we've ever given this account, which again, it's a useful metric. However, in this case, I'm actually more interested in the average. So Tableau is automatically going to aggregate up to a sum level unless it is predefined elsewhere. So if you predefine the aggregation in prep, it would honor that. But if there's no predefined aggregation, it's always going to go to sum. If I want to change my aggregation type, I can simply click into that field and then under measure sum, change from sum to average. Now I have a great view showing me, okay, you know, DevPoint LLC has a pretty large opportunity, but our overall discount granted is lower relative to the other discounts that we're giving to other companies. So we are answering 2 questions. The size of this opportunity, pretty large, not the largest, but definitely top 5, but one of the lowest discounts in our data set. You're also noticing that as I'm hovering over my tooltip, this discount field is showing as a decimal. If we want that to appear as a %, which we certainly do, we can change that formatting super quickly and easily as well. Simply find that field within the data pane or technically even within the marks card, but let's use the data pane for this. Click into it and change default properties. So go into this default properties like menu, click number format, select %. You can keep the decimal points at 2 and hit OK. And now you'll notice when I hover over it that I actually see my average discount in percentage form. So DevPoint LLC, the one that we were looking at before, has about an average discount of 1%, which is really not bad. So if I'm a sales leader or even just a seller, right, a salesperson, I would want to probably prioritize that account just based on the fact that I'm not, you know, having to cut into my margins and they seem like a pretty strategic customer from what I can see so far. Again, this is scratching the surface of what you can do, but it starts, you know, helping us answer those questions around, hey, who has an open opportunity? What is the state of that opportunity? What's the account that that opportunity is with, et cetera, et cetera. One last thing I want to do to this view before we move on to our next view is add in a couple additional filters. The first filter that we're going to want to use is our amount filter. As I mentioned, tree maps are great, but when we have a whole bunch of data in our view, some of these smaller opportunities in this case kind of get a little bit hidden. So by using the amount filter, I can actually enable my end users to adjust the scope of their view based on what they kind of want to isolate or what they want to look at. So click and drag amount onto the filter shelf right below close date, and then select all values before hitting next. From here, it should default to only show relevant values, but if it isn't, make sure you make that selection. This is telling us the smallest opportunity that's set to close this quarter is 792, and the largest is 491-ish, and then go ahead and hit OK. Go right back to that field within the filters shelf and select Show Filter. Now I can either now on this worksheet adjust this filter. Maybe I only want to look at opportunities above 50K. Or even more importantly, I can expose this filter to my end users on a dashboard so that they can set the scope based off of the type of business question that they are trying to answer, right? Maybe they actually only care about those smaller opportunities. Maybe they're aligned to the small medium business segment, for example. So they want to look at lower revenue, whatever it may be. You give the end user that autonomy to filter or control the view, based on what business question they're trying to answer. Very similarly, you can also add filters to make it more relevant to the person viewing. So within that data pane, locate the account owned by field and drag that onto filters directly below the amount field. A list of all of the different salespeople or account executives in this data set appear. Go ahead and select all and then hit OK. Just like with our amount filter, We can show it here, but more importantly, we'll show it on our dashboard and let not only sales leadership, but even these sellers, right? Theoretically, if this is their data and they're trying to close out their quarter strong, they're going to want to either go in and filter it to themselves or even set up what we call a custom view so that every time that dashboard loads, it defaults to them and they can just get right to business. Gonna pause. Any questions or any thoughts, please feel free to put them in the chat and then we can either address them as we go or circle back to them after we get through the dashboard. Okay, so we've answered our first business question, which is how many opportunities are open and what is the size of the open opportunities this quarter? Now we can answer the second business question, the insights into future state and past state, which is what is their overall buying history for every quarter, right, from within the history of this data set. So we can do that in a couple different ways. Again, very, very flexible. But in our case, let's use the close date field again. So click and drag close date within the opportunities folder or just within the data pane onto columns. Similar to measures or like, for example, when we dragged amount onto the view and it auto aggregated to sum, dates are going to auto partition by year. So if you drag a date field into the view, you'll always notice that Tableau wraps it in year and breaks it up on a yearly basis. To change that, all you need to do is click into the field and then select how you want Tableau to partition or measure this value instead. For our use case, let's use exact date. So towards the bottom of the list, and you'll notice when you do so, that wrapper of year will be removed and the field will change from blue to green. Next, let's drag out amount onto rows. By default, Tableau is going to create a bar chart for us. It's showing us over time, this data set starts in right around 2017. Overall, with all accounts for every quarter, what those buying habits were. And we're seeing some spikes. If we hover over them, we see this was early January. This definitely coincided with the beginning of a new fiscal year. So you're going to notice those seasonal spikes around quarters and year ends where buying tend to spike. This is very, very common for pretty much any sales organization and definitely common here at Tableau as well. We are going to continue customizing this view, but I want to just zoom out and talk a little bit more about the big picture of kind of why we are creating these different worksheets to answer specific questions for the purpose of having them actually talk to one another. So pop over to the large deal tracking dashboard tab or open a blank dashboard if you weren't using the starter workbook. I changed the sizing in the starter workbook to automatic in the dashboard. So if you're using the starter workbook, you don't need to do this step, but if you just created a blank dashboard, optional step, but you may want to change the sizing to automatic as well. And simply drag out those two views onto our canvas where it says drop sheet here. So I'll start with my account overview tree map, and then directly below it, I'll wait for that gray kind of tab or bar to appear, and then I will drop my line graph as well. One thing that you're going to notice is that this tree map automatically is going to like default to kind of like a cube or a box size due to its like standard sizing settings. If we want that to take up more real estate, which in this case we certainly do, you can just simply click into that widget or that sheet within the dashboard, look for this gray tab along the top and change fit from standard to entire view. Next, within that same widget, click the filter icon within that first kind of tree map view. So your view should look very, very similar to what you're seeing here. With this filter turned on, now we can actually start drilling in and having these two sheets talk to one another to have like a more kind of comprehensive dashboard. So you'll notice that if I select Five Bridge Institute, for example, it's our biggest opportunity to date, but when I do so, my line graph is filtering to just one single measly dot on the view. This is telling me that this is the first time I've ever done business with this customer. There's no, historical records associated with this opportunity or with this account. So this is the first time I've tried to do business with them. On the other hand, DevPoint LLC are a good friend with the low discount. If I click into them, we'll notice that the first time I did business with them was in September 2020. They made a pretty significant first big purchase. Purchases kind of dipped over time, but now we're seeing a spike kind of in current state with a close date into the future, right? Mid-August of 2022. So this is telling us that they're, more of a partner. We've done more business with them. However, there's two things that immediately strike me in viewing this. Tableau did recommend a bar chart a line graph based on the fields that I brought into this account history view. But when I actually have my sheets talking to one another and I'm actually drilling down into these data sets, it's helpful when I click into someone that has done business with us in the past. But when there's only one mark on the view, it leaves a lot to be desired, right? It's not giving me much for the size that it's taking up. So at this point in the kind of dashboarding or analysis process, you can actually start kind of iterating off of your previous versions, which is exactly what I would do if I was building out this dashboard live. So after testing out this functionality, I would go back to this worksheet and kind of continue tweaking it so that it's going to interact more nicely and I can better answer my questions and more importantly, right, better enable people to go in and answer their own questions too, right? Really have that self-service within an organization. So to return to that sheet to kind of continue customizing it, I have two options. I can either click into it and click this first icon within the widget toolbar called Go to Sheet, which will take me right back to the sheet. Or I could just, of course, click the Account History tab along the bottom banner here. Now I can start asking myself, okay, what would be a better visualization type? And maybe not even better, but what would be a different way to capture this data that we can explore to shed additional insight and to kind of make that dashboard more intuitive? One thing that this dashboard is not really bringing to the table currently, or this worksheet is not bringing to the table currently, is insight into whether or not these opportunities or these spikes represent data that was closed won, closed lost, or just currently open, especially when it comes to things that are slated to close in the future. Presumably those are all still open, right? Or else they would be marked as closed won already and they wouldn't have a close date set out to in the future. This bar or a line graph is not really telling me that. So I want to explore a way that I can add in that layer of detail in a way that still kind of follows that same flow and answer those same questions. One way to do that would be changing our view to a scatter view. To change this into more of like a scatter plot, the easiest way to do that would be going into this marks card and clicking circle. Now we have one single circle on the view for every transaction or every open opportunity within every single account. Now we can much more easily add in additional visual cues to help answer those other questions. So one thing I mentioned is I wish I knew or had more insight around my opportunity stage. Is it open, closed, or is it open, closed won, or closed lost? And now I can add that by simply finding that opportunity stage field within the opportunity folder and dragging that onto color. Now I have, this great little legend showing me these are all the opportunities that are closed, lost, kind of as expected. Some of these spikes were indeed representing data that was closed, lost data, closed won, as well as open. Tableau is also going to default to this cool highlight action so that you're able to click into those legends and highlight just the data that you want to see. This is nice. We're getting better, but it's still kind of hard to read. It's not super clear what we're looking at. So this is a trust the process moment. So it's going to look a little bit messy before it's going to look really nice. And then it'll hopefully all come together like a masterpiece at the end once we go back to the dashboard. But the first thing that we're going to want to do here is add in an element of size. So all of these marks are the same size. I would like to capture the amount of the opportunity with size as well. So locate amount within the data pane and drag that onto size. We have size captured in two ways currently, right? Along this axis and along or now with size. But I do think it helps us have that visual differentiator. I'm going to change my color or my opacity really so that when I have lots of marks on the view kind of within the same cluster, I can see when they're overlapping, and to make them pop, I'll add a border. I'm going to edit the colors as well, just to kind of make them follow, what we would expect to see when it comes to winning or losing something. So for closed lost, let's use red. For closed won, let's use green. And for open, let's use blue. And now we're making progress. We're getting there. Well, one thing that we also are still seeing though, is that because we have amount represented twice, both on size and along this axis, it's kind of unnecessary, right? We don't necessarily need it to do that. And what I really want to see is almost more everything on like a single linear axis. I don't need it plotted along amount, on this x-axis. I just only want to see it kind of based trending over time. So this is like a little fun hack. We would not be talking about Tableau if we weren't talking about fun hacks that you can do to kind of control the scope of the visualization. So I wanted to teach you this one. Right click into the amount axis, click edit axis, and change the range from automatic to fixed. Within fixed start, type -10 million. And within fixed end, type +10 million. And now we should have, oh, of course, one second. Let's try that again. We'll have everything plotted along one main kind of linear axis for us to more visually and easily see over time what those buying patterns were. There we go. The small marks are really, really small now. So let's increase our size. Within the marks card, let's click this little slider for size and increase the size of our dots. This is going to, again, trust the process. This is looking really busy right now, but it's going to be really insightful when we actually drill into one specific account and see their, transaction history within the organization. So trust the process and trust me. Make these dots a little bit bigger. And one last thing to just make it even more intuitive, let's add a visual indicator of where we are in time, where we are within that, close date axis along the bottom. So within this left-hand data pane, toggle to the Analytics tab, find Reference Line under Custom, and drag Reference Line to this very first cell, or I guess cell is the right way to put it, cell within this table option. So it's under Close Date and Table, and it should plot one single line along your view. For value, change from close date to today, which is a parameter that I created in that starter workbook. If you aren't using my starter workbook, select create new parameter, and it should just default to today. You can name the parameter today as well, and then hit OK when you are done. Now we can see that today is July 28th, and we can see where that is over time. So we have a ton of historical data behind us. As we would expect, they're all either closed won or closed lost, but we're seeing a big cluster of open opportunities now, some that are slightly behind us, maybe about a month old, and some into the future. If we pop back to our dashboard now, this is where the magic's really going to happen and where it's going to really come together. If I click into Five Bridge Institute, for example, now I still have one single mark on the view, but at least it's telling me more than it was with the previous view. It's showing that we had overall within this Five Bridge Institute account, we have had one opportunity. It was slated to close on July 1st, and it is still open. As a sales leader, I would say, hey, why are my salespeople not updating Salesforce with the latest data? What's going on, guys? So they would get that information. As a salesperson, I would ask, okay, maybe I haven't called them. If I really want to try to bring this in by the end of the quarter, I should probably do that, right? I should probably get ahead of this. And I can also see, okay, if this is my, big bet within my organization, right? If this is the largest account and largest opportunity that we haven't had closed, I should probably have overall better Salesforce hygiene again. So do I think this is going to close? Probably not, right? If the data is outdated and we've never done business with them in the past, maybe this isn't what I want sales leadership seeing or what I want to prioritize. Maybe instead, I should focus on accounts like DevPoint, where I'm giving them a lower discount and where if I drill into them, I can see, okay, you know, earlier on, a couple of years ago, we had some closed lost opportunities, but it actually looks like we're picking up some momentum with them. I'm seeing some smaller closed won opportunities, and I'm seeing 2 other kind of still open opportunities, and one of which is slated for significantly in the future. So it's not like I haven't updated that Salesforce record. And I can continue kind of drilling in and exploring all of those things, right? Who's done business with us in the past? What is their purchase patterns? Are we winning? Are we losing their business? Are we giving them huge discounts, et cetera, et cetera? These filters can apply to one or both of these views. So if I wanted to come in and say, hey, I am, you know, Eric Barnes here. I want to see only my open opportunities. Now this view also becomes much less overwhelming, and it's just all of his accounts. And if I hover over them, I can see, you know, what these, what stage it's in, when it was slated to close, and when, what the amount is. However, when I do have this view like this view doesn't actually tell us what accounts we're looking at. So now we're going to do further iterations. As I said, this is going to be an iterative process, and we can actually start kind of customizing the formatting to be even more intuitive. So I would, you know, come in here, I would see that. And then the first thing I would think is, okay, let's customize our tooltips. Again, let's go back to our account history tab here, either through the go to sheet action or just by clicking the bottom tab along the bottom. And then click on, well, actually, pivot back to the data pane if you need to, if it's still defaulting to the analytics pane that we use to add the reference line. And then let's ask ourselves, okay, what fields do we want within the tooltip here? Within each of these marks, what would be helpful to show us? And what would we want it to tell us? So the first thing I can think that we would want within each of these dots is the account name. So locate account name within the data pane and click and drag that on to tooltip. Other thing I can think of is what we're selling them. So there's lots of different products that we could be attaching to that opportunity. Let's find product name within the opportunity folder or within the data pane, and also drag that onto tooltip within the marks card. By adding fields to tooltip, you're noticing that the view isn't changing, right? The actual visualization itself isn't being altered. What is being altered is the pop-up menu when you hover over a specific mark. So now I can see, okay, this is with sample company, and the product that I'm trying to sell them here that we lost was MOL standard. This information is all super useful, but right now it's not super intuitive. So if you take literally anything out of this training session, know, and again, I'm probably biased here. I do have a marketing background as well, but it's formatting is king. Formatting is everything. You can ask and answer all the business questions you want, but if people don't know how to see and understand it, or actually, you know, take what they're seeing and do something about it, it's not a super effective visualization. And the best way to make it actionable is make it human readable. And you can do so through formatting pretty easily. It's really like, you just have to ask yourself, what would I need to know, or how would I need to see this to make this meaningful if I wasn't the one who built this myself? To format tooltips, just simply click tooltips within the marks card, and you'll be brought into a rich text editor where you can now customize accordingly. The first thing that I would want within this tooltip is the account name. So I'm going to copy and paste the field account name. So it's going to be wrapped in brackets. It'll say ATTR, which is attribute. So the attribute of the account name. Let's go up to the very start of my rich text editor. I'm going to hit enter twice, and then I'm going to paste my account name there. Let's highlight it. Let's make it bigger so it's kind of bold. That's the first thing that we want to see. I'll do 12-point font. And then let's do the amount. Maybe it's really right again, this is just whatever you prefer, whatever you think your audience is going to prefer. Let's change our font size back down to 10 and remove the bold. This is where you can have some fun. So don't feel like you need to copy me here directly, but this is just an idea of how I would do it. I would take my amount. We can delete that because we've now captured that. We can delete that. I don't need my parameter value represented in my tooltip, so we can just delete that. And then I'm going to keep everything else kind of as is. So we have our close date, we have our opportunity stage, and we have our product name. You'll not notice now if I hit preview, it's going to give me some weird asterisks. That's because it's not able to generate a preview because there's lots of different accounts represented in this. So to better preview this, hit OK and actually hover over any of the marks. Some of them still have that asterisk that's saying that there's still several opportunities within that account. Maybe it's a data issue. I'm using just like a demo data set. So really focus on this quarter. You'll notice that all of them do have that account name. But the point stands, right? It makes it easier for us to see. And now if I were to go back and filter down to Eric Barnes, I can say, okay, these are all of my accounts where I have a Q2 opportunity. These are all the accounts that I've done business with in the past, though. This is going to help me with prospecting and actually understanding not only how I'm going to close out my quarter strong, right, but how I can actually make, my overall annual quota, or I can even better partner with these accounts in the future by knowing their past kind of purchasing behaviors. Formatting is relevant not only when it comes to tooltips, as you've seen here, but also with titles and subtitles. The best way to think of subtitles and titles and subtitles is almost like you're trying to tell a story and you're trying to guide people into what to do. The most common thing I hear as a solution engineer is, I just don't know if the end users are going to know how to use the dashboard. How are they going to know what to click? It's great, tell them where to click. You can literally say, hey, if you want people to drill down into a specific account to see that account transaction history, tell them that through the subtitle. So here it's defaulting to the sheet name, which I had named account history or account overview. And I accessed this edit title by just simply double clicking into the title here. I'm going to hit enter. Let's drop this, since it's going to be our subtitle, down to 12 or 13, of course. And okay, I'll type it out and then I'll change the font size if Tableau wants to be finicky with me. But let's say click into a square within the tree map to filter to the account transaction history. You can also use bolding and color to, guide people or call out kind of keywords. But truly, it's a simple principle. We refer to it as guided analytics here at Tableau, but it's just guiding people where to click and how to interact with the views that you create. You could also really enhance the formatting on this kind of tree map as well. Right now, the only thing that's showing is the account name. If I wanted to enhance that or make that easier on the eyes, I could do the exact same process that I did with my account history tab, review that sheet and customize, in this case, right, the label, not the tooltip, because I certainly could customize the tooltip as well. But if I want to control what's showing on the tree map itself, that would be through the label button within the marks card. So maybe I also want some amount on label. I want to actually see what this value is, not only have it represented by size. I can simply click and drag amount from our data pane onto label. And now we see that amount on each individual square or rectangle as well. I might also want discount on that, since that's the other value that I'm looking at here. I can add both to this view really, really easily by just dragging it to the label option. Similar to Tooltip, Label has a rich text editor. If you want to access that to do any other bolding or enlarging, maybe the account name, click into it and then click the little 3 ellipses to open this Edit Label option. Locate the field that you want to edit. In this case, it's account name, which Tableau put on the bottom. I'm just simply going to copy, paste that up to the top, center format it again, bold it, maybe make it a nice 12-point font. Choice is yours. Hit apply to preview. And now I have something a little bit easier on the eyes in terms of the actual mark label itself. I could also, for example, maybe if I wanted this not to show as the full number, but I wanted to say 491K, super easy change to make. I would just simply click into the sum amount on my label card, hit format, and then change number. So under default, it's the 3rd option there, to currency custom, change my display units to K, and drop my decimals to 1 or 0. We've got about 30 minutes left. So the last thing I want to cover before I talk about actually publishing this up to Tableau Public, and then of course answer any outstanding questions that the audience may have, is actually formatting the dashboard. So before this dashboard would be production ready. In fact, I would say this dashboard is, we're getting there, but it's not quite production ready yet. There's a couple things that we would definitely want to add. The first of which is an overall title. We have titles for our sheets, but we don't actually have a title for what this is. So within the dashboard objects kind of pane along the bottom of the screen on the left-hand side, click and drag this text object to the very top of the screen. So it's going to be this like little tiny sliver of a gray bar. When you see that, you can hit release, or you can unclick it, release the click. And let's name this really anything you want, but maybe, you know, large deals closing, EOQ, or end of quarter. Let's make this nice and big. So 20-point font, we can even bold it, hit OK when we're done. It went from that tiny little sliver to a much bigger portion of the screen. So of course, let's adjust that. Let's drag it up to make it a little bit smaller. Let's edit our filters as well. We definitely don't need this full drop-down showing. So I'm going to just click into my filter, change this from multi-values list to multi-values drop-down. Once it's in that drop-down format, I'm going to change it from so it's currently what we call tiled, but I'm going to change it to floating so that I can move it around and drop it wherever I want. And I'm just going to put it up within that kind of title object, wherever I think it makes the most sense to put it. I'm going to do the same with amount. Again, I want my end users to be able to control the amount that they see. So I'm going to click into that. I don't need to change it from a list view since it's already kind of a collapsed or consolidated view, but I do need to change it from tiled to floating. So I'll click floating and then drag that into our view, or up into that top kind of title section. And then last but not least, this gradient or legend showing us average discount granted. Since we did decide to just add that discount value to our view, I don't think it's necessary to keep. I can just click into this whole, what we call a container, or that whole section of the view that was previously used for filters or legends, and just exit out of it. Tableau is going to warn you, say, hey, do you want to delete that container? Yes. In this case, we do indeed want to delete the container. And now you'll see that we no longer have that kind of white space along the side of our view. The very last thing that I would want to do before publishing this is add a subtitle to account history to make up for the fact that we don't have a legend for this either. So I'm going to click into that rich text editor. Again, just double click where you're seeing the title and then type in however you want to represent what the color means. So I would do blue represents open opportunities. Green represents closed one. And red represents closed lost. I'm going to use color here within my subtitle to make it legend-like in a sense. So I'm going to say, I'm going to highlight open ops, and I'm going to make that blue. I'm going to highlight, bold it and make it blue technically, but again, choice is yours. Highlight and bold closed one and make it green. And then last but not least, I'll do the same for closed lost. So rather than having, you know, like a formal legend showing, we have all of that same information represented in the form of a subtitle. Alrighty, this is definitely not the prettiest dashboard I've made, but it's probably one of the quickest, right? And it does the purpose that we needed to do, right? It answers those two business questions that we had, which realistically, like, it is $1 million question. Customers come to this and say, we need to make money, we need to make business. They don't actually really care how it looks some of the times, they just want it to work. And so mission accomplished there. We did the objective. So now it's done. What do I want to do with it? Within an organization, so for Tableau customers, we do have a sharing platform that is like a secure portal for company confidential information, much like this. So sales data that you don't want your competitors seeing, right? In those cases, they would publish to Tableau Cloud, which is Tableau's SaaS solution. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. You could a quick Google search, but it just means that we host it, or Tableau server, which means that they host it themselves. But the key there is that unlike Tableau Public, it is for company confidential information that shouldn't get outside a specific organization. In this case, we've used a demo data set. This is all made up data that I pieced together using Mockaroo and some other fun demo data set tools. So we are totally safe to publish this to Tableau Public. Simply go up to this top toolbar, locate where it says server. And the very last option is Tableau Public. Oops. And I'm going to hit save to Tableau Public. Like me, it might make you sign in. Oh man, let's hope I remember my password. Okay, let's try one more time. No. Okay, so I'll reset my password and we'll figure it out from there. But let's pretend that it did work. And now we have this great view on Tableau Public. Again, rest assured, I will certainly publish this, as soon as I get my password reset. And you can kind of download it and reverse engineer it if you weren't able to follow along today. But the beauty of Tableau Public is that it's going to serve as that repository of all of the great work that you've done, so that other people can kind of view and interact with it. So let's see, I'm somehow signed in on my browser, but not in Tableau Desktop. But if I navigate to my profile, you'll be able to see all of the great, well, not to toot my own horn, but all of the dashboards that I have published to my profile. Most of them are downloadable. I do a lot of volunteer work for Girl Scouts of America and other VTO organizations. So you're going to see some not business related data sets like songs from Spotify and gardening. But again, anything that you're seeing on there that say, hey, how did she create that? You can just download that workbook and see. Or you can access any of the other published views that other companies do. Tableau has a great presence on here, and the dashboard that we built a version of was actually inspired by one of the dashboards that Tableau for Sales Analytics, I think is the page name, published. So let's actually see. And it's formatted even more nicely, and it has additional dashboard or views that you can create. And again, fully downloadable. So definitely recommend checking it out if you want more information around, hey, we got started, but what are other ways that you can visualize really, really similar data? And here we go, right? Very, very similar to the view that we created, where I'm able to drill down and see exactly what I'm seeing, as well as some other great ways to visualize that. So we'll send this as follow-up as well, so you can get even further hands-on if you'd like. Okay, I'm seeing lots of questions. So let's pause. Okay. Well, I guess, what do you think? Should we dive into the Q&A section, or is there anything else that we want to spend for the remaining time here?
No, I think, yeah, we can jump into Q&A. So if anyone has any questions around like Tableau functionality or tools, or questions of the demo and dashboard itself, feel free to just post them into the chat, and Bailey will make sure to get your questions answered.
Perfect. And it looks like Janae and Paul are killing it in answering those questions. But one thing that I did want to just verbally say, because I'm seeing when you go to publish to Tableau Public, it might prompt you that data extract is required. That's to be expected. So if needed, just extract the data. It'll take it into Tableau's what we like in-memory database, and then publish that up to Tableau Public. The reason why you might receive error messages like that is that Tableau Public doesn't connect to, for example, like directly to Salesforce or other databases like Tableau Server or Tableau Cloud would. It only connects to Google Sheets or like flat files. So if you're ever getting that error message, just know that it's because it can't facilitate that connection directly, and don't worry about extracting your data. That is the next step in order to publish. Definitely be very careful what you publish to Tableau Public, though. It's aptly named. It's public for a reason. So especially if you're using any data that your company provides, or you're using like an internal database, if you actually get like a job, don't publish anything to Tableau Public that you wouldn't want the public seeing. Cool. Well, that was really, the meat and potatoes of what I wanted to cover. I'm happy to stay for any additional Q&A if there's any questions, comments, thoughts. But yeah, the time is yours. And thank you so much for following along and checking out and building a sales dashboard, doing some formatting tips.
So we have a question from Anthony.
Yeah.
He said, what do you recommend when we get additional data sets?
Yeah. So finding demo data, there's so many different resources for it. The first thing that you can do if you want to build a demo data set to capture very specific values that you want, there's this website called Mockaroo. Just Google Mockaroo and it'll take you to a website where you can say, hey, I want, fake account names or, fake IDs or IP addresses, whatever it may be, and it'll generate just like mock data for you. If you're looking for, and again, like that's like dummy data. Let me put it. And John, I exactly agree. So Kaggle is another great resource. Data.world is another great resource of just free data sets that are like not mock data, they're real data. Usually it's like, wineries in California, but yeah, just other data that you might want to visualize, for kind of, I guess, especially like recreational purposes. Great questions though. Yeah, finding data is sometimes like half of the struggle, right? In fact, sometimes finding the right data takes me longer than building in Tableau because Tableau is so easy to use.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, Bailey. I think finding data can definitely be the most challenging part of building out Tableau dashboards.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the community members earlier this week had mentioned like reverse engineering dashboards on Tableau Public. So kind of taking data sets and data that people have already created and working backwards.
Yep. Yeah, that's an extremely good point. And that's actually part of the beauty of like this Tableau for Sales Analytics page. There's so many dashboards published on there, especially if you're looking for like these, more sales-centric use cases. If you're interested in marketing, there's also Tableau for marketing, of course. So just browse Tableau Public, but I would say 99% of these workbooks can be downloaded, which also means that their underlying data can be downloaded. And the beauty of using data from like published assets, especially assets published from Tableau. I mean, we demo our product just as much as we use our product. It usually means the data set has, like meaningful insights or clear trends, that you can kind of dig into. So these are great data sets to use and download from Public alongside the packaged workbooks if you're, looking for kind of especially industry specific or use case specific data sets. But John, I agree that finding and cleaning data is a frowny face. I also do not enjoy it. I'd much rather visualize data. Awesome. I'll stop sharing my screen. But no, this was great. I really, really appreciate all the questions. And again, for you following along.
Yeah, thank you again, Bailey and Paul and Janae, for jumping on today as well. I think we're seeing kind of the chat slow down a little bit. So if you have any other questions, again, feel free to post them in the chat. But as always, like I have been for the rest of the week, I will send the on-demand recording, the finalized dashboard, some Tableau Public resources, and some of those data set websites that Bailey and the team mentioned as well. And someone asked about the YouTube channel. I will also include that as well. But amazing. Thank you all so much for joining. Just so grateful to have you and just kind of walking us through a really great hands-on session. And again, using like real life sales opportunity data, which I think is just great for students that haven't gotten an opportunity to kind of step into that corporate workplace feel to kind of see how to use data in the real world. So thank you again so much for taking the time.
My pleasure. Everyone have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. And then tomorrow we will close out Tableau Summer Camp with a Tableau Public Ambassador, Priya, and she will talk us through about building a digital personal brand on Tableau Public and really engaging in all the community networking opportunities. So a great way to close out an amazing week. Thank you all so much for being a part of it, and we will see you tomorrow.